Hey, everybody, this is Robert, and welcome to the show. Now, while much attention has been on the legislation proposed by Senators Bill Cassidy and Lindsey Graham, better known as the Graham-Cassidy bill, and yesterday's no vote on it, what some people may not be aware of is 2 weeks ago, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and 16 of his colleagues introduced legislation to guarantee health care to every American by expanding and improving Medicare, better known as Medicare for All, or in other words, a single-payer health care system or socialized medicine. To take a closer look at Medicare for All is CATO Institute Senior Fellow Michael Tanner. Michael, welcome to the show, sir.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Excellent. Now, I know you're familiar with the Sanders et al. Bill. Can you give the audience a summary of what they're proposing?
Well, essentially, this would be a single-payer system, a lot like Medicare is today, but much more generous. Basically, you would be able to go to any doctor that accepted payment, and the doctor would then submit the bill to the government, which would pay them. You would, in turn, of course, pay much higher taxes, but you wouldn't have any co-payments, deductibles, insurance premiums, and so on.
So do we know any specifics, like how much this government program would cost and how they would plan to pay for it all?
Well, we don't really know because this has not received scoring from the Congressional Budget Office. However, outside experts, including those at the Urban Institute and folks from CNN, have looked at it, and they've suggested that it's anywhere from $1.4 to $3 trillion per year.
Wow.
So that would be somewhere between $14 and $30 trillion over a 10-year period in additional government spending.
So, but as far as taxing authority, what's Sanders' plan, to go after the rich people again?
Well, that's always his favorite plan. He actually did not include any pay for in the bill, so there's no actual way to pay for it included in the legislation. He did, however, from his office, offer a number of suggestions, including a roughly 10 to 15% increase in the payroll tax, a 4% income tax on hike on all Americans, in addition to the payroll tax hike, plus additional taxes on the rich and corporations as well. So essentially, we'd all be paying a lot more under his plan.
Now, the benefits that are proposed are pretty comprehensive, from emergency services to primary care, prescription drugs, mental health, everything to audiology. Now, how does this socialized medicine program compare to similar programs in Europe and Canada?
Well, this is much more generous than any program that we're liable to find anywhere else in the world. For example, the Canadian system, which Senator Sanders talks about a lot, does not cover the full cost of prescription drugs, but this would call for 100%. The Canadian system doesn't cover all the vision and dental care. This would cover 100% of vision and dental, and so on. This would cover more than, say, in UK. There'd be less out-of-pocket costs than, say, in France or Australia. This would, by far, be the most generous healthcare plan in the world.
Now, anytime you have a free government program, or anything that's free for that matter, that really skews supply and demand. Would you like to comment on that?
Well, certainly, if this is free, it's going to increase demand. People are going to be quicker to go to doctors, and that's sometimes a good thing, sometimes not. But more people are going to want to see doctors. But at the same time, the senator wants to impose price controls. In fact, he wants to squeeze some $6 trillion over 10 years out of the current system by reducing rates of reimbursements to doctors and hospitals. If you do that, you're going to drive doctors and hospitals out of business, or out of the system at least. And that means you're going to have lower supply. You get common sense that if you have increased demand and lower supply, you're going to have shortages. That's sort of economics 101.
Exactly, and it's as if we didn't learn anything from the Nixon years.
Well, price controls have worked. I think Ronald Reagan used to point out that they didn't work back in the Roman Empire, and they used the death penalty to enforce them.
And so one of the concerns you mentioned is there a concern for doctor shortages. I mean, did we see that in Massachusetts?
Well, we face doctor shortages as it is. We're about 150,000 doctors short of what it's going to take just to take care of the population we have now as we age. And this is certainly not going to do anything to encourage doctors to go into the system. Medicare already under-reimburses doctors, which is why about a third of physicians are either not taking new patients or not taking Medicare patients at all. That's an increasing problem in the existing system. Imagine expanding that to everybody.
Now, just talking briefly about the current Medicare program for seniors, you hear most people say that this is really, really a popular program, and I believe it is. My mother's on it. However, there's a reason for its popularity, and it's not fiscal responsibility or sound economics, is it?
Well, no. In fact, Medicare is promising benefits and paying benefits that it really can't afford. According to the trustees of the system, Medicare is some $50 trillion in the red going forward. It means our kids and our grandkids, of course, are not going to be able to get the benefits that today's seniors do. On the other hand, it provides a lot of benefits for people who aren't really sick. It pays for your checkups, it pays for your routine care, pays for your prescription drugs. For a lot of people, this is a pretty good deal. Now, Medicare, if you get really sick, of course, doesn't cover you. That's why you end up in Medicaid if you're in a nursing home. And it's not a good deal for our kids and grandkids who are going to put the $50 trillion that we owe.
All right, just to get a snapshot, what chance does Medicare for All have in the United States of America today? And is this something that we're probably going to see in the future?
Well, today it has exactly zero chance. There is no possibility whatsoever that it is going to get 60 votes in the United States Senate with a Republican majority. If every Democrat was for it, still wouldn't come close, and not all the Democrats are on board. But it is a harbinger of things to come. If we look at who is co-sponsoring this legislation, it is almost everyone who's seriously talked about as a potential 2020 presidential candidate. So you see Cory Booker on board and Kamala Harris and people like that who have signed on. You see a lot of the intellectuals within the Democratic Party and the activist base supporting this. The Democratic Party is being driven left as fast as the Republican Party is being driven right by their activist bases. This could be a very interesting campaign issue come 2020.
Okay. And finally, Graham Cassidy never got a vote yesterday. I'd just like to get your thoughts on Graham Cassidy, the pros and cons, and the future of it.
Well, on the con side, Graham Cassidy didn't repeal much of Obamacare. Basically, it left all the spending and all the taxes in place. It simply changed how that spending was done. It delivered it back to the states in the form of block grants and changed the formula for those states, taking some money away from the Democratic states, particularly California, New York, and Massachusetts, and shifting that money out to more rural states that tend to be represented by Republicans. It did, however, give governors a little more flexibility in use of that money. That probably would have been a good thing. So it really fell short of any sort of repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Improvements would have just been on the margin, but it probably would have made some improvements. It would have certainly have gotten rid of the individual and employer mandates, which, of course, are very unpopular.
So can something like Graham Cassidy ever get 60 votes?
I'm not sure Mom, Apple Pie, and the flag could get 60 votes in this Congress right now.
Yeah.
Realistically, the problem is that health care is hard, as Donald Trump once said he discovered. What American people tend to want in terms of their health care is something that's almost impossible to deliver. They want all the health care they can get with a doctor of their choice and no wait, and they want it for free. I haven't yet figured out a bill that's going to do that.
Yeah, that's a utopia for sure. Well, thank you very much, Michael Tanner, for your thoughts, your time, and your expertise. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Always happy.
All right.